Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into something huge, India's 2025 census. We're talking about an exercise on a scale that's hard to fathom, with stakes that are incredibly high. This isn't just, the biggest headcount ever. It's arguably one of the most consequential democratic events happening anywhere on the planet.
It really is monumentally significant, and for quite a few reasons, actually. First off, it's India's first census since way back in 2011.
Right, a long gap.
A huge gap. So we're getting a picture of a country that's changed profoundly, and maybe even more critically, it's the very first time they're trying a fully digital-first approach for, over 1.4 billion people?
Wow.
Yeah, so this whole thing, it's not just data collection. It's like a tech revolution colliding with a potential political powder keg. And it's meant to be the socioeconomic mirror.
Okay.
Honestly, the data they gather here, it's going to shape the country's future. We're talking trillions of dollars in funding allocation, the actual balance of power in parliament. It defines India for the next decade, maybe longer.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to really unpack the core ideas behind this, what's happening on the ground, and all the different implications of this massive, massive effort. Okay, let's try and get a sense of the scale. Just picture it. Nagpur, maybe, or any big city across India, July 2025. You've got nearly 3 million enumerators out there. 3 million?
Incredible.
Moving through communities. But the really striking thing, the visual difference, those old clipboards, the mountains of paper from 2011, they're gone, replaced by tablet computers. It feels like more than just an upgrade, doesn't it? It's like a whole new way of doing things.
Absolutely. And, what's fascinating is that this huge digital leap is happening in India that's just fundamentally different.
No, so?
Well, think about it. This is the first census after the COVID pandemic, the first since India became the world's most populous country,
Right.
and the first since its digital economy just exploded. The India of 2025. It's a completely different place than in 2011. So the census is trying to capture that huge shift in data, even with all the massive challenges and, frankly, the political nervousness around it.
So this digital transformation, what does it actually mean for collecting data on this, frankly, mind-boggling scale? You mentioned moving away from what sources called a purely analog beast of logistics in 2011.
Right.
It sounds like it's almost real-time now.
Well, that's the goal. So enumerators, they're using a specific mobile app on these tablets. They record household info, and that data gets synced up with a central database pretty much in near real time.
Okay.
And it's all backed by advanced geospatial mapping to make sure, every nook and cranny is covered. It's a massive jump from collecting millions of paper forms.
Which took years to process, I imagine.
Exactly. Years to manually process and lots of room for error. This new system promises unprecedented speed, unprecedented accuracy, but it's not just about efficiency.
Oh.
Paradoxically, this digital push is actually highlighting, maybe even deepening, India's existing digital divides. So making it universal is a real test of equity.
That's a really important point. I mean, what happens if some regions just don't have good internet? How do they collect the data then? And what about the security of this massive central database, 1 billion plus people's info?
You've absolutely hit on the double-edged sword aspect here.
Right.
In places with poor connectivity, or none at all, enumerators have to work offline. That immediately creates risks, potential data loss when they try to sync up later.
I see.
And then there's the database itself. Securing personal information on over 1 billion people, that's a national security issue, plain and simple. A data breach would be, catastrophic.
Yeah.
Now, this digital effort, it mirrors the broader digital India push, and it definitely leverages things like the Aadhaar biometric ID system.
Which most people have now, right?
Over 1 billion, yeah. Unique digital identities.
Yeah.
But the census is different. It's mandatory. It aims for 100% coverage. That makes the logistics and the security challenges just way more complex than even Aadhaar.
Okay, so they collect all this data faster, maybe more accurately. But where does the politics come in? Because you mentioned it's not just stats, it's a political powder keg. You use the word delimitation.
Exactly. Delimitation. That's the key political flashpoint. It's the process of redrawing the boundaries of India's parliamentary constituencies.
Okay.
And the Indian Constitution says, basically, that constituencies should have roughly equal populations. Now, the thing is, the current boundaries are based on, wait for it, the 1971 census.
1971.
Yes. There's been a freeze on redrawing them for decades based on that old data. That freeze is set to expire shortly after this 2025 census data is finalized.
Wow, okay, so this new data could completely change the map.
And that reveals this deep democratic dilemma. How do you balance, past success in things like population control with future political representation, especially if that success means your state gets fewer seats in parliament?
And I guess that dilemma comes from the fact that population growth has been really uneven since 1971.
Wildly uneven. That's the core tension. You've got southern states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala. They've done really well on economic development, on family planning. Their population growth has been slow.
Right.
Then you look at northern states, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar. Their populations have just exploded in comparison.
So if you redraw the map based on 2025 numbers,
You'd see a massive shift in political power, away from the economically advanced south towards the much more populous north.
and the southern states feel like they're being penalized for doing well.
That's exactly their argument. They're saying, hang on, we followed national policies, we developed, we controlled population growth, and now we're going to lose our voice, our financial clout in parliament.
What does that mean for, the unity of the country, federalism?
It's potentially a foundational crisis for Indian federalism. That's not an exaggeration. Yeah. The results could spark huge constitutional battles, political fights, North versus South. We could see court challenges, deadlock in parliament, maybe even calls for more state autonomy. It could fundamentally alter India's political balance for generations.
Okay, so beyond just the seats in parliament, the census is also tangled up with another really sensitive issue in India, caste. How does that fit in?
Right. Well, for years, decades really, there's been this growing political demand for a full, comprehensive caste census. Specifically, to get an accurate count of groups classified as other backward classes, OBCs, scheduled castes, CCs, and scheduled tribes, STs.
And this 2025 census is the first time the pressure to actually include that full caste count has been immense.
Immense, yes. The government is facing enormous pressure to do it this time around.
So you have people arguing it's vital for social justice, right? To make sure affirmative action policies, reservations in jobs, education are targeted effectively fairly.
That's the argument from proponents, yes. They say you need the data to ensure equity.
But then there's the other side. What are their worries?
The opponents have significant fears. They worry that actually counting castes like this will just harden those identities, make them more rigid.
Okay.
That it could fuel social divisions, maybe even lead to violent political clashes as different groups basically fight for a bigger slice of the reservation pie. It's incredibly sensitive. Many worry it could make existing tensions much worse.
And just for context, the last time a full caste census actually happened was under the British in 1931.
Way back then, yes, 1931. After independence, India deliberately avoided doing it again.
Why?
Precisely out of fear that it would solidify social divisions that the new nation wanted to overcome. So trying to reintroduce it now.
Yeah.
Well, for many people, it feels like opening Pandora's box.
So the stakes around just defining group identity and who gets what are just incredibly high in a place as diverse and competitive as India.
Exactly. What was deliberately avoided for decades out of caution is now being pushed as necessary for equity. But that fear of unintended consequences, of stirring up social strife, it's still very real. And the political climate around identity is arguably even more charged now than it was, say, 10 years ago.
Okay, so setting aside the big political fights over delimitation and the social divisions around caste for a moment,
Yeah.
what else will this census tell us? What new picture will emerge of this new India that's apparently taken shape since 2011? Why is that important?
Well, that's the other crucial aspect. This 2025 census, it's going to give us the first really official, detailed, granular data on just how much India has transformed. It'll give us a proper snapshot, moving beyond just anecdotes or rough estimates.
And are there specific big changes that will really pin down things we couldn't measure properly before?
Oh, absolutely. Several key areas. First, the sheer scale of urbanization.
Right, people moving to cities.
The definitive shift from villages to these sprawling urban centers. It will show us the real size of the challenges around housing, sanitation, infrastructure in those cities.
Okay, what else?
Second, internal migration. The huge flows of people moving between states looking for work. This creates totally new demographic situations, new pressures on resources in cities like Bengaluru, Pune, Delhi.
Yeah, you hear about that anecdotally all the time.
Exactly. This will quantify it. And third, it'll give us a deep look into the modern Indian household.
Now so.
changes in family structures, who has access to modern things like the internet, clean cooking fuel, maybe even capturing the rise of the gig economy, millions finding flexible work online, which is totally reshaping traditional employment patterns. And look, this data, all of it, it's fundamentally the bedrock. It's what all future economic policy, social policy will be built on. It's just indispensable for governing the country.
But given everything we've discussed,
Right. In a country as diverse, as politically charged as India, the numbers themselves, they're almost certainly going to become a battleground. It's unavoidable.
so this great Indian count, as some are calling it,
Mm-hmm.
it's really a story about power, isn't it? And identity, and the whole future direction of the world's biggest democracy.
That sums it up pretty well, I think.
It really does feel like the implications go so far beyond just counting people. It's about how India sees itself, how it plans to govern itself for, well, decades to come.
Definitely. And maybe if we connect this to the bigger picture for you listening, think about this massive digital shift combined with all the deep political sensitivities, the social fault lines we've talked about. What lessons or maybe warnings do you think India's census process holds for other large, diverse countries trying similar big data projects in this digital age? What part of this whole enormous undertaking strikes you as the most surprising or maybe the most concerning?